What's up, everyone? Yes, it is I, your host, Natalie Morrison, and you might be thinking, wasn't this called Swim Masters? Well, yes, it was, and you're definitely in the right place. We decided that we wanted to give the podcast a bit of a makeover, and we're so proud to introduce to you ReVoicing the Future, a Women of NAM podcast. Don't worry, it's still the same content, still the same hosts. We just wanted to take this to the next level. And we're excited that you're joining us on this fantastic journey. The episode that you're currently listening to was recorded before the name change. And I just wanted to let you know that you are in the right spot. So keep on listening. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for all new episodes of ReVoicing the Future, a Women of NAM podcast, coming soon.
Welcome to Swim Masters, a podcast dedicated to help connect, grow, and support women in the music products industry. I am your host, Natalie Morrison. The Smart Women in Music Fund was established in 2018 by Robin Walenta, Dee Dee Hyde, and Crystal Morris to expand diversity, inclusion, and support for women in the music products space. Twice a month, I will sit down and host virtual conversations with various women across our industry to help foster mentorship and growth. Now, without further ado, let's dive in. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Swim Masters. I'm your host, Natalie Morrison, back and ready for another episode. Today's conversation, I get to sit down with Stacey Swanson, who has done so many incredible things in this industry. She's currently the Senior Project Manager at Practicing Musician. She's the Editor-in-Chief at Intune Partners. She spent a number of years at Music and Arts, and she is an incredible advocate for music education. And we talk about how her philosophy around the importance of music education really carried throughout her entire career so far. So, with that said, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hi, Stacey. Thank you so much for joining Swim Masters. So excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I can't wait to have a conversation with you today.
Me too. I think I would like to start and talk about your career journey, how you ended up in the music industry and where you are now, because we'll touch on that in more detail later on.
It's been an interesting journey, and I ended up in the music industry a bit by happenstance. But at the end of the day, I had spent nearly 13 years with music and arts, and have recently kind of parted ways onto the next big adventure. And now I am the editor-in-chief for Intune Partners, which encompasses Intune Magazine, Music Alive, and ASCAP Digital. And I write for all three of those magazines. And I'm also the senior project manager for Practicing Musician, which is new. It's a new and upcoming company, and it's an online music learning platform that is free to any K through 12 music educator. I also work on the nonprofit side too, and I'm also on the board of directors for Give a Note Foundation, where I'm also the treasurer of the board, and that's been a really, really great experience for me so far. And in addition to all of that, I'm also the admin for a couple of Facebook groups. One of them being Music Educators Creating Online Learning.
I love that group.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're a part of it. We are close. We're very, very close to cresting 48,000 members.
Wow.
In that group, and it is such a diverse group. It's international. We have educators joining the group from all over the world, and it's just a huge melting pot of experiences and questions. And it's been great observing how people work together, regardless of whether they're a part of the industry or they're in the classroom or they're in another country, which has been incredible. And then the other group that I am an admin for and help to lead is called Music Ed Advocates, Parents, Educators, and Industry. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
if you haven't checked that one out, you check that out.
I'm definitely going to. And I will link all of the groups in the description. So if anyone's
Oh,
listening,
cool. Oh,
they can
that's
check it
great.
out.
Yeah, no, definitely. I try to share as much as I can find, and I know that we have so many powerful music advocates out there, and I wanted to provide or help provide a platform to share some of the work that they're working on. And then as if I didn't have all of that to do, I'm also trying to build my own personal brand and my own website, do my own blog. And I have a couple of projects that I don't really quite want to disclose just yet because it's just in the stages of infancy. And
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe you'll have to just invite me back to talk about those in,
I
in
guess
the
so.
future.
That's
And
awesome, though.
yeah. And the really funny part about all of this that's going on in my career and in my life, the funny part is that I was actually trying to take a step back and focus more on my family during the pandemic. And it seems the universe has conspired against me, and has seemingly given me more, more to do and more to work on. But I gladly take on that work.
That's awesome. I feel like you and I are very similar, and we like to have our hands in many baskets.
Yes.
It keeps things entertaining and interesting at all times.
And you're always learning. If
Always
I only
learning.
if I was only focused on one part of something, then I kind of feel like I'm missing out.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you on that one. And especially working, I guess, in all of the advocacy work that you're doing, and we'll kind of touch on this later. Um, what a great time to be focused on that with just everything going on with the pandemic and how that's affecting education in general. So
Yeah.
it's, yeah, it's really interesting. So I did a little digging.
Oh no.
um, and I saw on your LinkedIn page, oh, it's just LinkedIn, that you went to school for music education and then you taught for a bit and then ended up at music and arts. Can you talk about your decision leaving teaching and what drew you to the retail world?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. It's actually a little bit of an interesting tale, so I hope you're ready for this. So the short answer
Oh, I'm so ready.
the short answer is that I actually had absolutely no intention of working in the retail music industry at all. I initially left teaching to go and pursue my master's degree in music education at the University of Miami. Go Canes. I love that school. It was an amazing experience. During my time there, I was on this full ride graduate assistantship, had the opportunity to teach. I was a TA for marching band. It was just this ultimate experience. I never played and performed more in my life on my instrument. It was just fantastic.
What is your instrument?
I actually play the bassoon.
Ooh,
Yeah, and bassoon. Not many folks play that, and so when you go to a little bit of a smaller school, and yes, University of Miami is not a very large school. You tend to play in all of the ensembles, but
yeah,
I wouldn't have traded in that experience for anything.
that's awesome.
And so, as I was going along with that, I was offered an opportunity to continue my studies there and pursue my PhD, also kind of a full ride scholarship opportunity. And believe it or not, I turned it down.
Wow.
I turned down a full ride PhD program, and there were a number of reasons for that. But here's really the core reason, as it goes kind of ties back into music education in my career. After only having taught for a couple of years in the public school system, I felt like I needed more experience in that arena before kind of leading the charge and teaching the next generation of teachers how to teach and run their classrooms. So I ended up turning that down and kind of left in pursuit to get back into the classroom. Unfortunately, upon moving back home to my home state of Georgia, I'm actually from Georgia. I'm now currently living in Virginia. But at that time, moving back to my home state, I had difficulty even landing an interview. That was in 2006. And during that time, there had been some music program cuts in that area. And so the jobs were a little few and far between. And if you had a job, you were kind of sticking where you were at that time. Eventually, I did land an interview, though, and the principal was actually a little forthcoming at that time. And she said that she could hire someone with less experience and pay them less money since I now had this master's degree. So it's kind of fair to say that I did not get that job.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And it's something that's probably also a component about myself that a lot of people in the industry don't know is that a large bulk of my personal professional teaching experience is actually in private teaching. So, since I was having a hard time getting back into the classroom and doing what I most wanted to do and loved, I decided to get back into private teaching and build up my studio. And one day I was driving down the street in Alpharetta, Georgia, which is where I lived at the time, and I saw this music store. And I don't know what compelled me to turn into this shopping center, but I did. And I walked in and I said, do you have any openings for a music teacher, to do some private teaching? And the manager of the store said, "Oh my gosh, yeah, we're always looking for music teachers. What instrument do you teach?" And I proudly said, "Well, I teach the bassoon." And he was like, "Well, we aren't exactly looking for that kind of teacher, but we do have a full-time job opening to work in the store. Is that something that you would be interested in?" And I 100% said no. I said, no, I'm not interested in working in a music store. I want to be a private teacher. And so, long story short, this gentleman just kept talking to me in the store and somehow convinced me to come in the next day. And I ended up going in the next day. I had an interview with him, and I had an interview with his boss, who happened to be in town, and didn't really think a whole lot of it. And then the next day, I got a call saying, "Hey, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you work in the store." And I still turned it down. I still turned it down. And it took a few more phone calls where I finally said, "Okay, I will work in the music store." And it happened to be a music and arts location. And looking back, I'm so glad that they convinced me to do that, because it turns out that I was really, really great at sales. So, and in my first year, I actually ended up as one of the top 3 salespeople in the entire company. And in the following year, I was, kind of promoted in a way to be a store manager. And in that year, the store that I managed was number 1 in gross sales. And it was, that type of experience that track record of success that kind of took me to music and arts at the corporate level.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which in during that tenure, I kind of wore a lot of hats with music and arts.
So let's talk about that. As you said, you wore a lot of hats at music and arts. What were those jobs and what did you learn from your time there?
Where do I begin? Well, uh, well, as I said before, I started out, just working as a salesperson on the sales floor of a music store. And, you know, as a salesperson, are the expectation is that you help customers that come into the store. You help sell products that are within your store or services that you offer within your store to those customers. And I absolutely loved being on the sales floor, because every customer that came in to the music store was an opportunity to engage a family with music. And at least for the music and arts brand, that customer tends to be more of a beginner or intermediate learner, or a family that's new to music. And because I, kind of hold this deep passion towards music education. And because of my background in teaching, I was able to easily engage with families because I kind of viewed myself as their personal consultant instead of a salesperson.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was absolutely helping them, in their music journey. And I absolutely love that time. And then when I got to become a store manager for music and arts, it was the same thing, but I got to spread that passion and that knowledge to my employees, my team of part-time and full-time employees, to be just as excited about every customer that would come into the door and help them in their musical journey.
I love that. I think that's such a unique way to look at a sales position, especially in music, and especially for the beginners and the families.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. I really love that.
Yeah, I think one thing that because we're both experienced musicians, and a lot of people in the industry are experienced musicians. But I think one thing that a lot of people, once you get really, really experienced in music or in your music career, we forget that very beginning moment, or those beginning moments of how someone comes into music making. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
can be as impactful as that as a student decides, or their teacher tells them what instrument they're going to play, and they come into the music store and you open that case for the first time,
Mm.
and that look on a child's face is always the same, and you'll never forget it. It's just this innate excitement of seeing that bright shiny instrument. Like, that's what makes retail work worth it, is to see just the excitement, whether it's they're opening their case for the first time, or they're taking their first music lesson, or they're actually kind of making that commitment and they're buying a professional instrument, or DJ lessons, or whatever it is. It's really inspiring to see music students progressing, and seeing their family grow with it too.
Oh, yeah.
Now, during that time, I was also serving as the at Music and Arts, we would call this person an educational representative or a school services representative, but
Mhm.
it's the person or the individual that actually goes into the schools and has good conversations with the band and orchestra teachers, or general music teachers about their program, assess their needs, help them to get products or supplies that they need for their classroom. I also served in that role too, so I wasn't just working with, musical families per se. I was also working with the teachers that were teaching them as well. And so that was kind of my experience, kind of being on the sales floor. And again, that was met with, a surprising success, because I didn't have a background in sales. I was just kind of speaking my truth and being a teacher and trying to teach as many people as possible as they were coming in the door. But I suppose it worked at the time. And then that's when the move happened. So about 10 years ago, 10 years ago, there was this identified need to have someone kind of be the voice for the lesson program for music and arts. And it was a brand new position. There hadn't been a centralized person that was doing nothing but private lessons supervision, kind of at the corporate level. And that those initial people that interviewed me called me back and said, you should really consider applying for that. And I did. And kind of on this leap of faith, I went through this interview. There really wasn't that much of a job description per se. It was just, you're going to be kind of overseeing and coordinating the lesson program for all of the music and art stores. And lucky for me, I was offered that position, and kind of on this leap of faith and moving by myself, I moved to Maryland. And ended up
Wow.
kind of beginning that role and what that looks like today. So after roughly 4 years of building that role and building the lesson program at Music and Arts and seeing, quite a bit of growth, the number of students grew fairly significantly during that period of time because we were placing some focus on it. I ended up kind of, again, taking a step back. I had, recently had a baby. I say recently because that's now 7 years ago. But I had my first and only child, and again decided that I wanted to focus on family and kind of take a step back. And so I stepped away from that lesson, kind of the overseer of the lesson program, and took a little bit of time off. Again, kind of like history has repeated itself in my present, but that didn't last for long. So I had gotten a call back from Music and Arts, say, hey, would you be interested in this part-time opportunity? And I ended up accepting that. So I worked part-time for their marketing team, editing copy, helping them with, making sure that the copy was reflective of something that actually, kind of made sense in music, since I was a music teacher. And then I also helped with, and this is where it starts getting to be like, yeah, you did what? So I worked in the business process management department, and that team is actually the team that does like website testing, or if there's an enhancement to one of the programs that the company would use, or I was often kind of set free to like go within all of these programs and do this wide net testing to see if there was anything that wasn't working as expected. And I would go back and then report and say, this component of this transaction did not work as expected.
Wow.
And so, yeah,
you
so
literally went, it's like, let's do this.
I went
and then this.
I wasn't kidding when I said I've worn a lot of hats.
Yeah, wow.
But so there's a lot of benefits to that. I'll go into that in a second. And so, then I was kind of on this like complete opposite side of the music retail business, and it was all of this behind the scenes work, which was fascinating to me because I'm not a detail oriented person, but I learned to kind of have this keen eye for everything that was going on kind of behind the scenes with the company. And so I did that for oh my gosh, I don't even remember, probably 2 years. I was behind the scenes. The cool thing about being behind the scenes is everything that you're doing behind the scenes actually helps to facilitate sales. And so it again kind of fulfilled this like inner passion of like the things that I'm working on. If I'm finding that a transaction isn't working properly, then that means that a family is having a negative experience, and they may not either buy that product or pursue renting an instrument, or like you can kind of go on and on with that. But that inner working of the technical side of the customer experience actually helps the salesperson to do their job. And that part I found fascinating. Yeah. So all of that happened, and then there's actually more.
Oh my gosh.
There's more. And so back in, this would have been 2016, I was kind of in this little period of time where it was probably maybe at the most 6 months where I wasn't doing the business process management. I was kind of back into, being at home and all of that. And then one day I get this call from, at that time, the former vice president of sales. And he called me and he said, you have a lot of experience. Would you be interested in coming back full time and helping out with our sales support team during what would have been it was a very difficult transition from kind of one internal management system to another. And again, this all sounds so technical, right? but
Yeah.
but I'd had that experience before, and I kind of had, I was on this hiatus with music and arts just temporarily. Anyway, he called me and said, "Would you, if you can come back full time?" It was like a "Can you start tomorrow?" kind of, kind of ask. And so
Oh
I
my
ended up
gosh.
kind of taking that leap. My husband and I had 7 days to figure out daycare, to figure out like our lives and how we were going to do it. And then
Wow.
I was back in, full time helping out with sales support kind of during this, what it was a very difficult transition from one system to another. And that lasted for 1 month.
Oh.
Because the following month, I was asked to change roles again, and become the manager of affiliate operations. And so, affiliate operations. A lot of times, when we hear the word affiliate, we think of a digital marketing affiliate,
Right.
like an influencer, or I'm going to put your logo on my blog. But this type of affiliate is different. And so this is a rental affiliate business. So a rental affiliate, probably the easiest way to describe it is, let's say I own a small business. I own a small music business and I have one location, and I decide that I want to help my community by renting instruments, but I don't necessarily have the capital or the investment to have a lot of instruments in my own inventory, right?
Right.
What you can do in that situation is you can become an affiliate with a larger provider. Music and arts happens to be one of those providers. There are several other providers out there. And so when you become a rental affiliate, the rental provider will give you the fleet of instruments. You rent the instruments, and essentially you receive a commission for every rental payment that's collected.
Interesting.
And so that is kind of what a rental affiliate is. And so within a month of me returning back to work full time, I was now managing all of the operations side behind it. And that was probably one of the biggest growing experiences of my entire career, was during that time. Because one, I was interfacing directly with business owners. And so this was a different level of customer and a different, softer touch than other sides of that business. And so I learned during the 2 years that I did affiliate operations management, that I learned probably it was my ultimate learning in customer service and servant leadership. Because when somebody calls you and they're a business owner and they're having, maybe some sort of technical issue, or maybe they're having an issue with a customer's account, or, kind of something along those lines, they need your help. And it's my job and my team's job. I did have a team that reported directly to me during that time. And it was our job to, help make that experience not just great for that individual, rental customer that there was a particular issue with, but it was also helping that business owner with that customer too. So it was a very, very different level of customer service, and I'm grateful for that experience. Now, during that period of time, I also had the opportunity to work in I guess what we would call acquisitions. You know, during that period of time, uh, there was kind of a flurry of music businesses that were looking to become a part of the music and arts family. And so I was a part of that team and a couple of different arenas, to where I was helping that business owner in some context, whether it's their rental business or whether it's their lesson program, because that's the next step, right? That's the next hat is, and the final hat. It is to be the liaison for that
Right.
person to help them convert whatever that component of the business that I was responsible for at the time. And there were a couple of arenas that I was responsible for over the years. But that was also a great learning experience for me, because when a music store kind of takes the leap and they decide that they want to become a part of the music and arts family, that is kind of a passing of the torch from, from a family business or this
Mm,
business owner to trusting their business with somebody else. And it gave me a lot of good experience in having that type
right.
of conversation and communicating and being extremely soft in tone and really helping that person and that community have a great first experience with music and arts, which then led me to the final hat, which was being a lesson. Again, I was back into lessons as one of the lesson managers. It was a regional position, so I oversaw half of the country, which at that point would have been, well over 100 locations and their lesson programs.
Wow.
At the time, I was, working on creating the sales training for the thousands of employees that are actually talking about the benefits of private lessons in the stores. But I was also helping kind of on the back end and working with marketing to creating good promotions for lessons, and basically working with many different departments to help make these large scale ideas come to life. So that was my journey.
But it's so interesting after hearing everything that you did with music and arts. It basically came full circle.
It did. It did.
Like, you went on so many journeys, but the passion and everything that you loved was all about teaching and music education and being that person to help kids fall in love with music, and that's incredible. No
Yeah.
matter what position you had, that was still the passion.
Yeah, yeah, it's actually really interesting that you say that, because I was kind of contemplating, like you made me think when you kind of like sent a couple of ideas, and I got to thinking about it a lot today. And looking back on it, there were definitely some key takeaways that I took from my experience, very long experience with music and arts. And I think the first one, and probably the most important one, if anybody's listening out there that's considering a career in retail, or if you're a music teacher that is kind of ready to make the leap and to try something different, 100% my skills and experiences as a teacher fit into this realm. And because I had that background, I, like I said before, I was by no means ever a salesperson. I never considered myself a salesperson. I didn't think so, at least. I was helping families make important decisions at different stages of their students' musical journey. And that to me
Yes.
was paramount and extremely important. And it didn't matter what I did. It all tied back to the customer experience, that family, that individual child. And I think even though I'm not a quote unquote teacher in a classical sense now, you'd better believe that I was and am still absolutely teaching this love of music every day. And I still do. It doesn't matter what I do. But I absolutely learned that one constant within the music retail industry that helped me to transition to all of these different roles and to learn all of these different skills. So another thing that I learned was that I had a myriad of skills to offer to different parts of the business outside of being in sales. And all of those roles, kind of like I said before, all of those roles facilitate making music, whether it's in the back end of making transactional sales a possibility, or working with a small business owner to become an affiliate so that business can now create more music makers. All of it kind of ties together. So there's a lot of career options out there for anybody that's looking to try something different. It's absolutely out there for you.
Yeah. And you're shining such a cool, unique lens into the retail world that I don't think a lot of people would, and that's just my opinion, but maybe not a lot of people would necessarily think like, oh, I just love the way that you described how you took on that sales role of working in the retail store. I think that's just really unique and different. And I hope it shines a light to other people that this is what you're doing, essentially.
Yeah, it's really important work. And if we didn't have, avenues of music retail, whether it's a brick and mortar, whether it's your local friendly music store, whether it's music website,
Yeah.
whether it's just on the interwebs, if you will, like all of it's leading back towards this central cause of creating as many musicians as possible. I think one of the larger lessons that I learned during that time is patience.
Right.
I learned a lot of patience, patience working with other businesses, working with people, working with other departments, working with parents that have no experience with music.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one that I'm kind of personally impassioned to explore more. But being in sales, having that experience and working with thousands and thousands of customers, patience goes back to the notion that there's always going to be something difficult that you have to work through, whether it's a complaint or a bad experience. And I think it's human nature to take that frustration out on the person that is trying to help you.
Right.
But once I adopted the mindset of patience and this is not about me, then I very rarely would become like offended or defensive, in any of those types of situations. It was always kind of just this water off a duck's back, and it's not about you. They need help, and you are the person that's going to help them. And then I think the final big, and this is probably more of a personal professional learning during my experience there, is that I actually learned what my true strengths were. And my true strengths is to connect people together and to build relationships, as well as to share my enthusiasm and be excited and talk about that passion with other people. And other people in that sense can be someone that I was working within the building from a different department. It could be a parent. It could be a business owner. It could be my boss. I learned that if I shared my enthusiasm, that enthusiasm connected people together, and that helped me to build and forge positive relationships with a lot of people.
I love that. I kind of want to turn more into the music education advocacy because that's such a passion for you. Um, and I would just love to hear a little bit about what your hopes are for music education in the future. What is your vision? Where do you want to see music education? Yeah, it's a big question.
Yeah, that's a big question. Okay, I'm gonna have to take a deep breath on that one. So yeah, I've kind of taken this turn, you know, personally and professionally, to kind of take this strict focus and this very, very like laser focused view on music advocacy. And, I suppose one could think, well, Stacey, you're really holding all these different positions right now. How's all that related to music advocacy? But I tend to always think of things in its most simple form. So to me, advocacy at its very core, and this is my opinion, is the simple act of sharing something you're passionate about to others. And if you think about it that way, anyone and everyone affected by music, whether you're an advocate or a parent of a music learner or a products manufacturer or you're a performing artist or you're in the event industry, we should all feel this sense of passion for making sure that the next generation has the ability to receive a musical education in their school. We should all feel
Yes.
that. And
Yes.
yeah. Like we should feel this this deep in our belly, the fire in our belly, to talk about how music has affected us to as many people as possible. Now, for me, in my situation, working with a company like Intune partners with the 3 magazines that I'm going to be writing for, that provides an outlet to give great content to millions of students in K through 12
Yeah.
education. So that can help keep them engaged and to help keep them interested in music. To me, that is a component of advocacy work, is just this simple act of keeping students interested by teaching them something new. Now, another, in my one of my other roles, being involved with a company that's providing free curriculum content like Practicing Musician, that kind of speaks to me in terms of equity in music, which is a pretty large
Yeah.
issue. We still have states, we still have school programs that don't offer music. I think the last statistic that I saw was approximately 5 million students don't have access to music education in their schools right now.
No.
It's a staggering statistic, and
It's
if we don't, provide as much as we can to those school programs, in a way that a company like Practicing Musician could, where it's free content, um, by providing that service free, I am a part of ensuring that more children find that passion for music that I do, it's because it's free, and it can kind of overcome any type of hurdle at the school level of, well, we don't have a budget. Okay, well, here's a part that doesn't require budget at all. And so that to me is advocacy, because I'm working towards a cause that helps address the issue of equity in music, and I'm really excited to be a part of that. And then on the flip side, participating, having the honor of participating on a board of directors is my way is my way of being an advocate and giving back and helping to raise funds that go back directly into school programs that need it most. And so if you kind of add all of that together, I'm in this position of having the opportunity to be an advocate to thousands of educators and millions of music learners. And all of that, like anything that you do, can become advocate work. I don't have to be a designated music advocate, and I don't have to do that full time, but the work that I do helps millions of people because I chose to do the work. And I think if more people adopted that mindset within the industry, what I'm doing, whether I'm making an instrument or repairing the instrument, like everything that I'm doing is helping that one student to become successful. And if that one student becomes successful, then the likelihood of more students becoming successful is apparent.
Wow.
So
My heart is so full right now. I love it. You're so inspiring and so passionate about it, and your mindset around the work that you do and the purpose behind the work that you do. It's absolutely incredible.
yeah, so I think the next level, and this is a part that I'm still working out in my mind. So hear me out.
Okay.
So in the future, I kind of want to hope to add to other parts of the industry, private teachers, performers, parents. We are, as well as I do, that the music education, music performance, the music industry, and I will put education in the industry because it has to start somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
That the ecosystem of the music industry is intricate and extremely interconnected. And if there is a component of the industry that needs our help, then regardless of where you fit or where you live within that ecosystem, we can all rush to help that one part, because if we help that one part, I'll use, the events industry right now is having a really, really tough time because we're not having musical performances, right? We're not having
Right.
concerts. We can all rush to help the events industry in their advocacy work, because that in the end completes the ecosystem for the industry. If right now, a lot of music educators, down in schools, I know this because I'm the admin of this very large educator group,
Yes.
we're seeing a lot of, burnout. I have never been an observer of teachers, including my daughter's own second grade teacher, working so hard to keep students engaged during this time.
Yeah.
And, working, 12, 14-hour days just to make sure that the kids feel seen and known and heard. And I absolutely want to rush in there and do everything that I can to help make it easier for them.
And I think the group that you started and that you're an admin of, it's helping so many educators out there feel that they have a community that they can rely on and learn together and grow together, and
Mm-hmm.
they need it right now. I'm helping my mom with her teaching and trying to make sure that she feels comfortable and is on the path, and I feel like I'm learning with her, and it's like,
Well, we're definitely all learning together. And one of
yeah.
the things that I actually really like about the group is that there are, you know, it's not just teachers that are within that group. That there's, industry. There's really cool products that are coming out right now, that can help with some of this.
Mhm.
And it's cool to kind of be the one of the orchestrators of bringing all of that together, because that kind of all goes back to that ecosystem. right?
Right.
If a teacher doesn't know that there is something out there that could help, make their days a little bit easier, you know, if they don't know about it, they're not going to use it. We're just going to continue to kind of have this, cyclical, burnout, week after week after week. And so,
Yeah.
I'm proud to be a part of that and to provide, some sort of community for people to come together and talk about what they're going through, and to also share, best practices and products that can help. So I'm happy to help with that. I didn't even include that as advocacy work, but that is too.
Well, it is. I mean, part of my job at D'Addario is I've been with helping with the education strategy and how D'Addario can be a resource for educators, and
Mm.
just letting the educators that we work with and future educators and anyone out there who needs a resource, that we're here for you. We
Mhm.
can provide you with videos and just anything that you need. Like, we want to be that resource for them as well. So I think we're all coming together in ways that we just never imagined we would be coming together.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, that whole saying of "we're all in this together,"
yes.
it's it is actually true. It's not just a tagline, because, again, if you kind of go back to the infrastructure and the ecosystem of the music industry, we do rely on one another. We rely on teachers having, music programs in their schools so that we can, grow them to become eventual performers, and,
Yeah.
working in different segments of our industry that we're all so passionate about. And so if one area of it is struggling, then, we should all be rushing to help that one part so that we can kind of maintain that balance.
Yeah, definitely. So, to wrap up, I would love to see if you had any advice for women in the industry who might be trying to find their place or are interested in following specific passions that they might have and not know how to act on them.
Well, I will start off by saying it took me a while
Yeah.
to get to that point. But, I have thought about that, and I've had some time, to reflect upon my experiences and, my personal roller coaster ride in the in the music industry. But I think ultimately, especially as a woman in in this industry, stay true to who you are, and you are a woman. I choose to lead lead like a woman, and I'm not interested in changing. I'm just going to be myself. And so be yourself, be true to who you are, and don't waver from that. I think secondly, and this is a bit of a, just a aside, that if you've never taken, a personality test before, like the Strengths Finder, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to take that. I would make the investment and do it. It's actually not that much money, but
Are you
when
talking
you
about like the Myers, the INFJ personality test?
that's one.
Yeah. There's also
Um,
the Enneagram. I think I butchered that name. The Enneagram test or something.
Yeah, there's a variety, and they all kind
Yeah.
of give you different insights. But Strengths Finder is another example. That one's actually a really good one, because it kind of it's kind of these series of questions that you have to rapid fire answer, and it's basically going off of your gut instinct of what the answer is, and then based off of that, they kind of come up with an assessment of what your natural skills are based upon how you answered that question. And so if you
Mm,
haven't done any of those types of activities, I would consider making the investment to do it, because you gain this deeper or enlightened insight on what you are naturally good at and what your natural strengths are. And then knowing that and having that knowledge about yourself, then you can make career or life or, strategic choices, based upon what that you're good at. And so if you kind of lead your
Right.
path in that way and you start gearing towards opportunities that are more akin to what your natural talents are, then you're going to find more immediate success and less frustration. And so, I have to brag for a second, but if you have taken that Strengths Finders test, I'm just going to share my top 5. So these are my top 5 skills, and they're just single words. So it's strategic, activator, woo, communication, and connectedness. And so, in a nutshell, kind of
That describes you perfectly just from this entire interview.
yeah. And so, like, kind of what that means in a nutshell is that my skills lean toward using my voice, talking, words, getting people excited, informed, and having the ability to bring people together in a purpose and a mission, so kind of like fired up, ready to go, like, let's go. So I made that choice to kind of pursue things that go towards this natural skill set. And so we'll see where this journey takes me. I think the third piece of advice, and I only have 4, so we're almost there. The third is really more of a mantra from a website that I follow called Lead from Within, and that's a global leadership and consulting firm, and it kind of describes that leaders with influence give when they do not have to, they care for others, grow continuously, live authentically, empower other people, manage hardship, and serve with humility. And so if you get there, you're doing great. You're doing great. And a lot of that mentality are natural skill sets for women. And so if you just embrace who you are, then you will be a leader with influence. And I think lastly, as far as career advice, there's this, woman that I like to follow on Twitter, and her name is Erica Williams Simon. And she has more of a background in being involved with politics at a very young age. But right now, she's currently the head of the Creators Lab at Snapchat, I believe. So she's in Snapchat now. But she has this pinned tweet up at the top of her page. You got to go check it out. And it kind of best sums up the advice that I would give. And it's also held true to this wild and crazy journey that I've had in the industry. So here it goes. And I'm just going to say it verbatim. The best career advice that I can give: don't ever attach yourself to a person, a place, a company, an organization, or a project. Attach yourself to a mission, a calling, or a purpose only. That's how you keep your power and your peace. So I'd say, in the writer's words, and I'm going to quote, it's worked pretty well for me thus far.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that is such a great way to wrap this whole thing up.
You've got
I love
this.
it. Yes. Everyone listening, you got this.
You got this, and you can be an advocate in any part of the music industry that you do. You just have to speak up and talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, Stacey, I thank you so much. Your words, your wisdom,
this was
your
great.
story, just absolutely incredible. And I thank you for all the work that you do for music education. It's so important.
Well, thank you for everything that you're doing with, doing this podcast, featuring smart women in music. It is joining Smart Women in Music was one of the best decisions that I made, because I didn't know that I didn't know that there was a community of like-minded people
Yay!
out there like
Yay!
me, like me. And it's been really powerful to make female connections within the industry that care as much about it as I do.
Amazing. That's what we're here for. And that was the mission and the purpose and the hope, is to bring women together in this industry and know that they have a support system and people to learn and grow with. Well, thank you so much again. I so appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks for the invitation.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Swim Masters. Don't forget to follow us on social media, including Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, to stay up to date on all new things swim. We'd love it if you'd share and leave us a review. If you would like to learn more, please visit www.smartwomeninmusic.org. This episode was co-produced and edited by Stephanie Lamond and Natalie Morrison. See you next time.